Yeah, you give wonderful examples of that in the book of things that we think we know because history has told us the story. We think we know how the why the First World War got started. I think that was one example. Maybe you
Yeah.
can run us through the short version of that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's people who have written about this previously, and they've told part of the story. The part of the story that often is told is that Gavrilo Princip, who's the person who assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which started World War One, a chain of events that started World War One. It was a total fluke in the sense that the Archduke's car broke down literally right in front of him, right? So like the car broke right where the assassin was standing, and so it was sort of this opportunistic killing that leads to World War One. The thing that I discovered in researching this that I haven't seen written about as much is that the Archduke went on a hunting expedition in England several months before this. And when they were loading the shotgun for the hunting expedition, the gun went off and the bullet sailed over his shoulder by like 3 inches. So he might have died in England months before he was assassinated. And if that had happened, maybe World War One would not have occurred. So, I mean, this, and then, there's a lot of historians will say, okay, the humiliation of Germany in World War One leads to the rise of Hitler in World War Two. I mean, you can very quickly see how a bullet moving 3 inches down or up could have some really profound effects for the way the 20th century unfolds. And I think that's the nature of history. It's just that it's easier for us to infer, very straight lines between what happened first and what happened later and to write out these sort of accidents.
Yeah, yeah. There's one that you tell about Abraham Lincoln as well. Maybe you could share that one with us. I like that one.
Yeah, so Abraham Lincoln was actually warned of an assassination plot against him by a person who was working in the White House as a clairvoyant. And he was basically hired by Lincoln's wife because he claimed to be able to speak to the dead, and their young son had previously died. So she brought him in and she found comfort in him. Abraham Lincoln thought this guy was a quack, and he definitely was, probably. But it was one of these things where what ended up happening was he actually had real knowledge of the assassination plot because he was friends with John Wilkes Booth. So it's an interesting example of how the messenger matters as much as the information very often in how history unfolds. Because if one of his, confidants had said, "Look, we've discovered intelligence that they're plotting to kill you," Lincoln might not have gone to the Ford's Theater. But instead, because this clairvoyant told him, he was like, okay, well, this guy doesn't have any idea what he's talking about, and then he gets assassinated as a result. So it's one of those things where we like to think that information is just objective, but it's not. And the way that it's presented and framed, and who the messenger is, does affect the course of history as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, as we kind of begin to wrap things up here, um, who do you see as your target reader, and what do you hope people will take away from this book? What's the message you really want them to get?
That's a very nice question to ask. So, my target reader is someone who's intellectually curious about the world and their own life. I mean, I think it's something where I hope people think about their own lives slightly differently after reading the book. I hope they think slightly differently about the world. I hope they get a sense of awe about the way the world works. And I also think that there's ways to philosophically interpret some of the science that I present in ways that make their life feel more meaningful and uplifting. Because, part of the modern malaise that I find in a lot of people I talk to who are upset or sad about their own lives is like a feeling of powerlessness and a feeling of interchangeability, right? Like I'm going to be replaced by a robot or by artificial intelligence, or I don't matter or whatever. And I think the scientific truth is that you do matter. I think that we're all reshaping the future constantly. And to me, that makes me feel comforted. Even though I don't feel like there's a cosmic purpose, I do feel like there's something about my life that's going to reshape the future. So, I think there's a lot of different angles. The book is part history, part philosophy, part science, part social science. And that is where I hope that regardless of someone's interest, they can dip into it and find something that's helpful for them. One of the greatest things about the world is that we've got 8 billion different brains trying to make sense of the mysteries of life. And everybody will come to Fluke with a different takeaway, I think. And that's what I like. I like when people write to me and say, here's what I thought, and it's not going to be the same way I think about the world, and that's fine. That's one of the beauties of existence.
Where should people go to find you, to find information about you? Do you have a master website that will clue us all in?
I do indeed. So my main website is just my name, brianpklaas.com. But the best place probably to find my writing is that title that I told you before, The Garden of Forking Paths. I actually write a newsletter with that title. So if you Google my name, Brian Klaas, and The Garden of Forking Paths, you can subscribe for free to that newsletter. And I write articles 1 to 2 times a week about some of these subjects and my thoughts on various topics that fascinate me and hopefully will fascinate some other people too.